Hello, my name is Anya. I'm a graphic designer and a content creator documenting my journey becoming a full-time freelancer, self-employed. Hopefully with this video, it will help you decide whether going to an art school or degree related to graphic design or design in general is for you, because I know that this is a really big decision to make. It's a huge commitment. People ask me whether a course is useful, and so I just want to break down the 10 things that were most valuable for me because I went to an art school and I do claim to be more classically trained, I guess, in terms of graphic design. It's also where I discovered graphic design. But a disclaimer, do your own research. I am only talking about my experience. I am fully aware that everyone had their own experience in art school. Number one thing that I ultimately always go back to, you gotta master grid work. It doesn't even matter if you are a brand designer. I think it's one of the biggest principles to know how to do because it really just gets you to understand what makes good design. It also unlocks this understanding of print design in general, whether that's posters, flyers, brochures, books, magazines. Once you get the grid work down and you understand how a system works, then everything just kind of unlocks. I think what makes graphic design so intimidating is that when you go into it, it just all seems like everything is so clean, everything is so systematic. How the heck do graphic designers do this? If you want to learn about grid systems, I recommend this book, Grid Systems by Josef Müller-Brockmann. It's great. But the main tips are you determine the columns and rows, and then elements are always in the grid field and not in the gutter. The gutter is the blank space at the edges of the page that is outside of the grid. I had a professor, I think the best professors I've ever had, and he specialized in print design specifically, and he could not emphasize enough this rule. Thanks to him, to this day, I still remember everything that he taught me in terms of grid work. So truly, I would not abandon this. I would honestly take the time to learn how to master grid work, especially if you choose not to go to art school or not get an art degree, for you to get that practice to understand how to put a spread together. What are the rules? Why can you do this but not this? Once you master that, then you can look at posters and how the grid work of that is split up. I understand that there are some graphic design posters that don't really follow a system, but I think one of the biggest things that I've also learned from my art degree is that you can only break the rules once you know the rules. And I think that's super important to consider in anything that you create. No course or professor can teach you to stay disciplined or organized. This one is really important. I think that going to an art school for a few years, you can be enrolled in a class, but you are still on your own. Make sure that you get the deadlines on time. Make sure that you express yourself creatively, staying inspired, and making sure that you do the work. No course or professor can teach you to stay disciplined or organized. That is all on you, and that is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my art career. I've expressed this many times, and if you have been a long time watcher, then you're probably tired of hearing this, but honestly, before this year, 2024, I wasn't doing jack. I was not doing anything. It would take so much energy, so much out of my soul to get up and go to the desk and do work. And that was one of the big reasons why art school was so hard for me, or doing this degree was so hard for me, because I had to expend so much of my energy. Don't expect that you're gonna magically get this motivation or inspiration to get up every day and do the work and do your homework and make sure that you submit your projects on time, because that's all on you. But there are certainly tools that can help you stay on track. If you've been following my channel, you know I'm all about staying organized and discipline and self-improvement, which brings us to today's sponsor of this video, ClickUp. I've been using ClickUp for a few years now, so I was actually quite excited to partner with ClickUp, and it's honestly one of my favorite tools to have used in my workspace, both for my professional career and for my personal life. If you're anything like me, someone who thrives with a plan and loves ticking off those to-dos, this is for you. And it's also the thing that makes me the most productive in the day, to be honest. ClickUp is a free, all-in-one productivity tool that can help you stay organized, focused, all from one place. My favorite thing about ClickUp, and one of the things that keeps me productive is how easy it is to set up sprint cycles for when I have a really busy month. So I can just know exactly what my week looks like in the day, and it keeps me on track on what needs to be done for the rest of the week. They've got systems for checklists and even time tracking, which lets you know how long a task takes you. Whether I'm managing client projects, planning out content, or just organizing my day-to-day, it's where everything comes together. So if you're looking to level up your productivity, go visit ClickUp, check the link in the description box to organize all your big projects and goals for free. If you love ClickUp, my code will also give you a 20% off if you decide to upgrade. Thank you so much, ClickUp, for sponsoring this video. And this is more related to graphic design specifically. Typography is an art itself. Typography can be an entirely different subject or course that you need to learn other than graphic design. Like it's definitely its own thing. I even had typography classes. It needed its own course for you to really understand typography and how important it is and how you can experiment with it. There's so many different terms. The difference between typeface and font, that's also another thing that a lot of people get confused by. So typeface describes the whole family. So you've got like Futura, or you got Avenir or Helvetica. That is a typeface. Honestly, I explained this super badly when I was recording this video, so I'm gonna do a voiceover. So a typeface is the design of a set of characters. So exactly what I just explained. And a font is a specific implementation of that typeface. It refers to the particular weight, style, or size of the typeface. You also have sans serif and serif. Fun fact, sans, S-A-N-S, is actually French for without. So the translation of sans serif is without serif. Even I get very confused when people say serif and sans serif. I have to like think for a moment, okay, which one is that? You just have to know that serif literally is referring to the small lines and strokes that are decorative for the letter. So that is something to really remember about typography. You don't need to know all these terms like what an ear is, or what a bar or shoulder or ascender or descender. Like I honestly don't really use those terms in my everyday career as a graphic designer, but what is important is actually being able to understand the differences of kerning between a letter, and that evokes an entirely new feeling. You'll actually see a lot of what's trending right now, like these retro modern style right now uses a lot of like these 90s serif typeface with very tight kerning. This is what I mean when you have to really understand typography and its anatomy. It's not just the font. If you think that you can just download a font, use it in your logo or in your prints or whatever, it is so much more than that. And it's probably the reason why you might feel stuck when you're looking at typefaces and you're just writing the words down, and it just doesn't give that same professional finished look that a lot of graphic designers do today in the industry. So you got to understand, and I hope that this lesson gives you that idea like, oh wow, yeah, this is something I have to learn and I can't just look over. It's all about the detail. Every detail in graphic design makes a difference. The next one is so important. It's not related to graphic design, but it's related to any art endeavor or journey or path or career that you're thinking about. I remember it was like one lecture on a random day, probably a random Tuesday or something. Nothing was special about that class, but that one sentence that was said in the lecture by a professor stuck with me for all these years and all this time, that I still fully abide by. That's another thing that is special about going to an art school, is that you have these moments, these very, what seems so insignificant sentences to the professor or to other students might strike you in a way and might change your life. When you go to an art school, you're gonna meet a lot of art kids or people who are interested in art, obviously, and the only thing that they pursue is this art, the craft. And I understand, like, it's a very cutthroat industry. You really need to hone your craft. This professor said, pursuing interests outside of your art is crucial. I think that just because you're an art student, that doesn't give you an excuse to keep educating yourself and to pursue other hobbies. Like, I know that's That might be a really hard thing to swallow, but even though I went to an art school, I still taught myself many other subjects. I was interested in anthropology. I remember at the time I was reading a lot of anthropology books. I even went to pursue another whole degree afterwards. I pursued economics, and I learned finance, marketing. I had to, with basically no math knowledge, by the way. My math in high school was horrible. I think it's so important to expand your horizons and your knowledge, because art at the end of the day is an expression. It's an expression of yourself. And if you don't have anything to fuel your creativity and your inspiration, then your art is just gonna die. It's not gonna come out of you. It's not gonna thrive. And you need other interests outside of your art in order to keep fueling that creativity. You need other subjects to fuel your life. What is there to express if all you ever have is art? You can't express anything else if you don't have other interests. Build your character and your interests outside of art. And I think that is the best thing that you can do. Educate yourselves. Read your books. Don't take choosing an art path as an excuse to not do other subjects in life. I think that's a boring life, if I'll be honest with you. The difference between CMYK and RGB. I actually learned this in art school. I had no idea about this before I went to this art degree. So RGB, which is probably the default way of setting up your Photoshop files and such, it's basically used for digital screens only. It's not used for print. If you have your document set up under RBG and you're using it to print it out, it's not gonna look good, because RGB uses additive color mixing, meaning that the more light that you add, the brighter the colors get, and it's adding the colors red, green, and blue. It offers also a much wider range of colors compared to CMYK, which is why it can be really easily used on digital screens, but when you print it in real life, there's only so much color that can come out of it, right? So when you are creating websites or digital posters, it's only ever meant to stay on the computer. RGB is for you. However, CMYK is used for printing. If you are going to make posters or magazines or brochures or whatever, you need to have CMYK in your document setting, because it uses subtractive color mixing, where colors get darker the more colors you add. So more ink is gonna get layered on, right? CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So the mixing of these colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, is used to create the colors once you print them. A key black is added to create depth and shadow in the image or design that you're printing out. Don't mess up your document, because it's the first thing that you have to check when you're creating a new document, especially in InDesign or Illustrator. If you're using the Adobe apps, just remember this: RGB is for screens, CMYK is only for prints. Just gotta remember that. Everything else is the same. I'm gonna make this real short. Networking is key. Art school is not gonna give you that. You have to work on your network by yourself, period. It's not going to be magically granted to you. It's always going to be a subject that you are going to have in your everyday life. Even as a freelancer, networking is key, because if you don't have jobs, then you have people to fall back on. Not only is it good for career and job opportunities, but it's also just something creative. You as an artist, you need to constantly fuel your creativity. And if you don't have people that you can talk about this stuff with, then you're gonna make things 10 times more difficult. You need people that you can talk about. Even an entrepreneur friend, if you're a freelancer, then be friends with business owners and talk about what it's like having your own business, because you need people to stimulate ideas. I need to take my own advice, honestly. Trust me, I don't have a big network, but I'm working on it. Hierarchy in design. This is one of the principles in design that's super important. How big and how small these design elements can be, right? I think it would be really confusing to go into graphic design without really understanding hierarchy and its importance. Why are certain things bigger than others, I think I saw a project before where someone took the page number and made it the biggest thing in the page. So it's just a 6, the biggest thing, and then all the text was on the side. And it's why? You can't just randomly do that. You have to ask yourself as a designer, why did I choose to Unless if the book was about the number 6 or something. That makes sense. Then you use hierarchy to show the importance of that number. But if it's not, if it's just a magazine, then why did you make that so big? I know it's quite abstract, but once you understand that everything matters in design and everything kind of needs to be intentional, besides experimentation, that's a whole nother topic. But if you're creating a project, like things need to be intentional and you need to understand hierarchy in order to execute the project and the meaning behind the design. This is a whole topic and I can't cover everything, of course. I obviously cannot teach you color theory. I really advise you to watch a few videos on color theory from other YouTubers that could probably explain it better than I can. How to use colors, why some colors pair better than others, My favorite trick, instead of teaching you the entirety of color theory, I'm going to tell you something that's probably going to help you. And I like to use this a lot. In the color wheel, right? You have the color wheel. I'm just gonna pull it up in front of me so I know what I'm talking about. And you have the primary colors, blue, red, and yellow. When you mix the primary colors together, so blue and red makes purple, red and yellow makes orange, and yellow and blue makes green. And those are the secondary colors. So blue, red, yellow, primary. And this is why this palette looks so good and you'll see it used so many times. I think Bauhaus only really used primary color. Bauhaus is a graphic design movement that happened about like in the 1950s or so. And then you have secondary colors, green, orange, and purple. So that is your color theory. You have the color wheel complete. If I want to make something look really nice, and I'm using the color blue, for instance, like my design is entirely blue, using the color opposite of the color theory, the opposite of blue is orange, the secondary color. Blue and orange is a great pair. You cannot go wrong with blue and orange. And I'm gonna just throw a bunch of examples of blue and orange artworks and designs that look amazing. Purple, the opposite of purple is yellow. That's also an amazing pair. Another classic is red and green. When you understand that, you will see it everywhere. You will see so many artists use it. It just never fails to look good. Of course, this is a huge topic, but this is just one big tip that really helps me as a designer, in all honesty. You cannot design without a process. You need the R&D first. You need thumbnails. You need sketches and drafts and revisions. You cannot make a design on the go. You need to sketch out your ideas. I sit down, I brainstorm. You will not succeed without process work, and it's actually a really big thing that the creative industry is looking for. They are actually interested in how you do your process work more than the actual design. They need to know that you know how to think creatively, think outside of the box, and some of your best ideas will be like your last idea out of 300 that you write down or sketch out, I remember my homework assignments, I had to do 100 thumbnails for one poster. 100 little tiny drawings, just sketching out really quickly what every composition is gonna look like. That is something that you can't avoid, and also a really good thing to have in your portfolio. I've always had this told by industry professionals. They want to see process work in your portfolio. So do not opt out. Do not opt those out. Just learn how to have fun. Don't take it so seriously, I think, because if you are so serious about doing art, then it takes the fun out of it. And that's something I really had to learn in my art career because it was quite intense. It was a very intense period of my life. But if it's something that you're really, really, really wanting, then go for it. Try it out for yourself. I just know that it's quite expensive. It could be pricey, but perhaps you can opt out for a course or something rather than a whole degree. With graphic design, I think there's such a big emphasis on corporate design becomes so manufactured and so inauthentic. But I just want to say, do not forget the artistry that comes with this career. At the end of the day, you're still an artist. You're still the creative one here. Create things that you actually want to express, as well as also understanding marketing and logical things behind design, right? You need to know who it's for and make those correct design choices, but also Just don't limit yourself from being creative, because I fell into that trap. I definitely fell into that trap. I definitely abandoned my artistry, which really impacted my creativity and my artistry in general, and led to massive creative blocks, like to the point that I couldn't even look at art anymore. You just need to know that you are still an artist at the end of the day. So you need to understand that. You got to accept that part of yourself, and you got to nurture that. I really, really encourage you to nurture that part of yourself. I'm gonna wrap this video up. I hope that it has been very useful, and I hope that whatever decision you make, please do your own research. Do not use this video as like your only source of information or research. I encourage you to expand on your knowledge and to reflect on what is right for you. Yeah, thank you so much.